So I'll start with college. I got a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in political science. During that time, I interned at an organization that worked with the UN on Iranian human rights stuff. So I
Okay.
got to go to the UN for it. I went to Cambodia for a month
Wow.
long research trip. And really my goal there was at the time was FBI intelligence. That was kind of what I was trying to juice my resume up in
Hmm.
preparedness for. So summer after I graduated with my master's, I passed the exams, got invited for the interview in Boston, and didn't get the job. So yeah, so heartbreaker. So that was rough. That was, that was the dream. That was something that I really wanted. I think that the other candidates that interviewed with me were far more experienced. They had careers and other jobs and were older than me. I guess that's just what I say to make myself feel better.
Sure.
But
Whatever you gotta say, right?
so
Whatever helps.
yeah, so after that, I started looking at private sector intelligence jobs like physical security. And throughout this time, I was working, all throughout college, I was working retail. I worked
Mhm.
at a Nike store, selling sneakers. That's kind of how I, paid the bills,
Mhm.
gas money, all that. And through that time, my gym eventually noticed that during when times where I'd be in school, that I was coming during the day, and they are actually the ones that approached me about hey, we need some help. Would you like to work here? And we worked out this thing where I could work full time there, and they would let me off for any interviews. Like if I had an
Mhm.
interview, no questions asked, I could have the
Amazing.
day off to go. So
Mhm.
it was like an ideal situation, and that's what I did right up until COVID.
And what was your title again?
Aquatics Assistant is the job that's on my resume. What that
Mhm.
really was is essentially lifeguarding, helping out with the swim team, putting out the lanes, helping with equipment stuff. You got to
You
juice up
gotta
the job title a little bit.
right,
So
right. But you gotta do what you gotta do to work towards that ultimate
yeah,
career goal, right?
yeah.
So which gets us to your career now.
Hmm.
Why did you want to get start a career in cybersecurity?
Yeah. So, you know, from graduating my master's, that was May 2018. And COVID hit in May or March 2020.
Mhm.
So by that time, I was already pretty beat up by the, putting out hundreds of applications, going on interviews, not really getting too much traction. Obviously losing out on the dream job that I wanted.
Right.
So I was already kind of beat down, and then COVID kind of further, put me in a situation where there's a lot of uncertainty. So that is where I was like, look, I'm never gonna have my life paused like this where I could go add a new skill or I
Mhm.
could go learn something new or change directions. I'm probably never gonna have this opportunity again. So I really thought about it, and I'm really into health and wellness and fitness. So I thought about physical therapy, everything was kind of on the table. And then, I knew cybersecurity was kind of big. I figured that this was something that wouldn't necessarily waste my education in
Sure.
international relations and political science. Like there's kind of, a realm where that's relevant. So
Sure.
ultimately that's what, it was the lower barrier to entry than,
Mhm.
medical. That would have been a
Sure.
whole nother series of schooling. And
And so what is your job title now?
so now I am a cyber incident response team engineer. Currently, I'm at CVS.
Okay.
Previously, when for my first role, similar role, cyber incident response center analyst at ADP. That was the first job, and the CVS move was recent.
Awesome. Congrats
So
on the
thank you, thank you,
the new position.
appreciate
Can
it.
you tell us talk more about your day to day? What does that look like?
Sure. So when I started out, in 2021 at ADP, it was a SOC analyst role,
Okay.
but essentially, but we would take investigations kind of all the way to remediation. We didn't have a team that we necessarily escalated to.
Mhm.
So that role was essentially, monitoring a dashboard, looking at incoming alerts from various sources, and then working these things to remediation. CVS, much bigger company, number 4 on the Fortune 500, 300,000 employees, like, huge. So we do have a SOC team that's beneath
Mhm.
us, and they will escalate alerts to us. So as far as the day to day, I'm getting up, monitoring, going through my email, monitoring an escalation dashboard and see if there's anything that team is escalating to us. And then, we have a lot of third parties too that we work with. So if we hear of an incident going on in a third party, we kind of have to get on the phone with their security teams and make sure that that's all being taken care of before we, go back to doing business with them.
Can you talk more about your transition as a whole? Like, how did you
Mhm.
go from like aquatics assistant to cyber incident response engineer?
Sure. So the way that I went from aquatics assistant, which lifeguard, let's be real,
Hey.
is basically once I made that decision that cyber was the way to go,
Mhm.
my first thought was, okay, I have to go get a degree. This is a new field. I should go get a degree in that field if I want to work in it. But I
Right.
actually had some really good, mentors in my life who said, like, you know, make sure before, with college, you don't know if you're getting that return on investment. So they were like, look, talk to a dozen people that are in the field, get on LinkedIn, talk to some people, see what they have to say.
Right.
So I messaged about a dozen people, maybe more, basically giving that whole backstory I just gave to you and what should I do
Mhm.
here. And 100% of them responded with, don't worry about the degree, take a boot camp,
Right.
take some courses, learn on your own, get a cert, and apply for some jobs. When all of them unanimously answered that way,
Wow.
that was
Mm,
when I was like, okay, I mean, this is it.
That's
These are
yeah.
professionals in the field, and this is what they're suggesting that I do. And then it
Mhm.
got into, shopping for boot camps.
I love that. That's awesome. So is there anything advice wise, what would what kind of advice to those with no prior experience in cybersecurity? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. So, I think that the first thing that I think a lot of people that are completely new, they're dealing with the imposter syndrome. They're dealing with
Mhm.
the, I was working at my gym, or I was
Yeah.
a chef, or I was,
Nike store. Yeah.
Dustin last week, the gymnastics coach,
Yes. Hmm.
he was in my cohort, and
Oh yeah.
so the first thing is like, well, I'm not a computer person. Like,
Hmm.
this is scary. And it's,
Hmm.
you do have to, you kind of, I guess, have to take our word for it that,
Yeah.
you take the boot camp, and after the boot camp, throughout the boot camp and after the boot camp, you're still going to feel that way. You just kind of
Hmm.
have to trust the process. I think Evolve gets you to a great point where then you can study for some of these big certifications. And now you have some education on your resume, you have a certification on your resume. Now you're at the point where, there's a big gap in cyber workers, and so I think part of the learning curve for a lot of these companies is that they need to start understanding that they need homegrown talent. They need to
Hmm.
have people that they take from the bottom because there just isn't that talent pool out there. And so if you position yourself to, have that education, have a certification, you have a good attitude. My other advice here is treat the job search like a job, be consistent. I didn't get my job through connections.
Hmm.
I just would search the same terms, the same locations every single day. And when the job was
Hmm.
posted, I was right on it.
Hmm.
So treat the job search like a job, be disciplined. You do have to sort of beat an algorithm. You do got to make sure that your
Right.
resume is full of keywords. That's
Keywords.
kind of
Yep.
how it bubbles to the top. The other things I have here are communications key. Communication is a huge skill here in this field. Like, you not only do you have to collaborate with a lot of teams, but
Mhm.
you have to write highly technical written reports and documentation and stuff. So if you
Mhm.
can communicate and you have some base level knowledge, it's a huge skill. And
Mhm.
then the final thing here is keep in mind that the people who are interviewing you, they're shopping for a coworker. It's not just can this person do the job or how
Right.
efficient this person's going to be. It's like I got to talk to this guy every day, guy or gal, every
Right.
day. So I have to interface with this person every day, whether or not you click on a personal level and you're personable and you have some personality. That is a huge. I've been on interviews on both teams already to
Mhm.
add people to the team, and that's huge, whether somebody clicks or not.
So what made you ultimately choose Evolve Academy to help, get you, launch that
Mhm.
cybersecurity career?
So COVID hits in March. I probably make this decision to go down this path in April, May. It was like June-ish where I was doing my own studying every day and
Mhm.
trying to learn as much as I can about the field, as well as shopping for boot camps. And a lot of them met in person and then went remote for COVID. So the first thing that came to my mind is like, okay, that's not going to be smooth for a lot of these places.
Right,
Like,
right.
there's going to be
Just the
technical
reality.
difficulties. There's
Mhm.
going to be issues with like the user interface. So literally, my first criteria was something that's tried and true, being remote. Like, I want something that is remote, that's been remote, that has a good track record. I want all of the wrinkles ironed out before I
Mhm.
join so that I can focus. And
Mhm.
of course, Evolve had a remote program. They had had
Mhm.
it for a long while before then. And so everyone kind of raved about it. Everyone that I talked to really liked it. Dr. Phi over here was a great, first chat that I had at a point where I was still talking about getting the degree, and he didn't like shut me down on that. He was like,
Right.
"Hey, look, these are the facts. Whatever way you go, like I'm sure you'll be all right." From a personnel perspective, was great. From as far as on paper, it being remote was great. And that's just, ultimately what made me make my decision.
So can you tell us more about, back to, the journey itself,
Mhm.
and what kind of challenges did you face, just during the transition period, and how did you overcome them?
Um, Firstly, I I was as far as challenges, right?
Mhm.
I was coming into this process already beat down by
Yeah.
trying to find a career, and at that point I already had spreadsheets with, hundreds of applications that I had put out and had already been on interviews and had already lost out. So I
Mhm.
was beaten kind of coming into this process. And so it was really
Mhm.
tough to eventually make that decision to pivot over to something completely new, completely different. The first challenge is just mental, is just
Yeah.
just trying to commit to a totally new direction. It was intimidating. Um, your pride takes a hit. I went to school
Mhm.
for all this time. I studied for all this time,
Yeah.
put in all this work, and now I'm going in a completely different direction. Did I throw it all away? So first off is
Mhm.
mental, right? The second is actually the material, right? So this is material that's completely new to me. So again, we were in COVID. It was during lockdown. So just like I said, I treated the job hunt like a job. I treated
Mhm.
studying for this like a job. So I set an alarm. I would, wake up at 8. I would work till 4, take a lunch break, like while on unemployment, just learning
Mhm.
cyber stuff,
Mhm.
and I really, really committed to it. So um, that's how I approached that challenge of the material being intimidating. Was I just dove into all this material that's online. I mean, that's what's so cool about this field. And I just watched the most recent one with Dustin, and he said the same
Yeah.
thing. Like, if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you can't get to sleep, like, you can make progress on your journey by throwing on
Mm-hmm.
YouTube or getting on any of these resources, these hack the box, all this different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
There's just endless amounts of things for you to dive into.
Back to what you said about the material all being new and it's intimidating, and he had said did it all make sense? No, but I just kept studying and kept putting one foot in front of the other, and it all just kind of falls, it all kind of comes together, and very cool. Thank you for sharing. So let's talk about what your favorite part of working in cybersecurity. What's your favorite part?
Being an incident response, you're always on your toes. You know what I mean? Like, and that's one thing that I definitely want the students to hear is how broad the field is, right? So you have people who work 9 to 5. They have, nights and weekends off. They work on these kind of extended projects, whether it's with a certain product or whether they do like advocacy or communications or GRC stuff. But then in a role like mine with incident response, with this job, I'm on call. Obviously, there's pros and cons to that, but being an incident response, especially at such a big corporation, is you are seeing all of the cutting edge tactics and techniques from threat actors. If I had to describe what my favorite part is, it's probably just having this kind of bird's eye view of the bad guys and kind of what they're up to.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting. Getting to see,
Yeah.
what's the new thing they're exploiting, what's the new trends, because
Mm.
you're going to see it before it ends up in the news.
How does the industry differ based on what you kind of envisioned early on versus what is actually reality?
Well, I think part of what contributed to the imposter syndrome and like the fear was I thought everybody in the field's highly technical. They're gonna know way more than me, and they're gonna like dance circles around me because I haven't been
Mm-hmm.
in this field or been a computer guy forever. And I think when you come in, that's when you realize how much uh, being a good communicator is key. And I attribute a lot of my success to just being a good learner, being a good listener, being a good communicator. Like, soft skills are needed in this field. And so, okay, if you're not the most technical person, if you're on your way up, you're learning some of these things, but you know what, you have a great bubbly personality and you
Mm-hmm.
communicate really well and you listen really well and you take diligent notes and you can make a great PowerPoint to make your point about something. Like, just how, I guess what differed from my thought process was I thought everybody was going to be like my man Ramen Deep over here,
Mm-hmm.
like dicing everybody up, and that I would kind of be sitting in the corner like way over my head. And that's not the case. There's a lot there, like I said, you could work in the communications sector where you're putting together like phishing awareness stuff. You're putting
Mm-hmm.
putting together communications for awareness for, whatever the upcoming threat is. Maybe you're working on a product team. I don't know. There's a spot for everybody, I think, and that's
Right.
definitely what surprised me. I definitely thought it would be a little more of a silo.
Right. Right. And to your point, I do hear a lot of people say just how competitive they think the industry is, and that they're going to kind of have to step on the person next to them to to move up, and everybody is everybody just helps each other from my perspective, it seems like everybody just is helping lift each other up because everybody knows that they don't know everything.
Yeah, that's a really good point too. Is a lot of the very technical people who you see and are intimidated of are very often super excited to share that. Also, just from a management culture, I think, I come from, I worked at the Nike store for like 8 years,
Mm-hmm.
and you're in the sales environment where it's all about sales and it's all about pushing sales and stuff. When you move into a security mind, it's much more laid back. No disrespect to salespeople. You need salespeople. You
Right.
need, but it just was such a different vibe for me. Everyone is so focused on the mission. When times are slow, especially my management, a lot of them are very into kind of the wellness of us at the analyst level. They're like, hey, it's slow right now. So like, make sure you're taking care of yourself, make sure you're taking time off
Mm-hmm.
and getting sleep and stuff because
Right.
it's going to hit the fan and we're going to
Right.
need you. You
And
might get
you will
that.
have to grind. Yeah.
Yeah, you might get
Mm-hmm.
that 2 a.m. call or whatever, but during the low times, it's like, okay, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
take that victory.